Good morning. I'm Tony Christ. Welcome to Sunshine and Transparency. We're recording this on 9/29/2024. Last and Today's topic is war. And you say, what does this guy know about war? Well, we cite some people that have a lot of very specific knowledge about it, and certainly we're going to insert our opinion into it too. Uh, I will give you a heads up. I welcome anyone that's new to the podcast. We try to talk about issues that are important today, and our efforts are to talk about the truth. We want to present them in a truthful manner. We have no vested interest in any issue we present, and we are continually striving to approach the truth. You never get there, but it's important to try. So on war, we're going to start off talking about Ray Dalio. And Ray says there are three risks to war, and two of them are internal. And Ray also says that there's a 35 to 40% chance we're going to be in an external war, World War III, if you want to label it, or an internal war, like the Civil War. 35 to 40%. Well, that's almost 50-50. So he was really ranking the chances of war, both internally and externally, as very high. And he talks about five forms of external war. He talks about a trade war, which we know we're in right now. We're restricting goods left and right with China. We've made numerous restrictions with Russia. We actually relaxed restrictions with Iran, but there are restrictions imposed with Iran. Technological war is his second form of war. And again, back to China, there have been a number of restrictions on our chips. China has responded and restricted their companies to buy NVIDIA's chip. So that's an even though they're still importing it. A political influence war. You hear it going on at the UN. You hear it going on at the ambassador level and by the president himself and the leaders of these foreign countries. They're clearly in political war. The mullahs, the Iranian leadership. Even though there are conflicting messages coming out of Iran, the new president says we want peace. His boss, the Ayatollah above him, says there are going to be repercussions to the recent attacks by Israel into Lebanon, that there will be repercussions. Now, mind you, and I'm in this camp too, Iran is playing it close to the vest till they get their nuke up and operating. They don't want to attract too much attention. And I do believe that is what they're doing. And Iran with a nuclear weapon, oh my God, that is a scary thought to me. There are people around that think, well, it will force them to be mature, and it won't necessarily need to lead to a negative consequence. But I mean, when you have a state that calls us the big devil and Israel the little devil, and talks about eradicating us. They not only want to eradicate Israel in the Middle East and have Islamic countries control the total Middle East. That policy has been there for quite a number of years with Iran. They talk about us as being the big devil, and they continually want to eradicate us. And they've killed hundreds of military service people, them or their proxies with Hezbollah in the past, going back to the Reagan administration. They've not shown anything other than hostility toward Americans. So Iran is a complete unknown, and a nuclear Iran is petrifying to me, frankly. So, and then after you have the political influence, you have the capital wars. Now you have sanctions and tariffs. Now, there's a two-sided story unfolding there. We, of course, are the world's reserve currency, but things have dramatically changed since 1944, pre-Bretton Woods, when that was set into place. And there are a number of countries now that have united and are avoiding trading in dollars. And this is not good. Also, the other effect is when they see us sanctioning Russia in particular, and when they see us putting tariffs on China, countries get nervous because they've been reliant on our currency. And what that has done is it's caused other countries that heretofore weren't opposed to the dollar to, to polarize and move away from the dollar. And the number one country on that list is Saudi Arabia. Now Saudi Arabia has been tied to our dollar, and a dollar for petrodollars were the thing that has kept our dollar in as reserve currency since 19, I believe, 74, 76, when the original agreement was signed with Saudi Arabia. Well, the Biden administration recently has been treated, to say lukewarm by Saudi Arabia is probably an understatement. Biden, because of the assassination that occurred, came out very strongly against Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia has been propelled into the BRICS, the group of countries which started out as four countries: Brazil, Russia, China, and Iran, and it's been increasing. India, and now Saudi Arabia, and there are a number of countries, Brazil and others, who have indicated and are partly in the BRICS, but are moving toward the BRICS. Now, the BRICS have the basic elemental BRICS, the original ones, have a commitment to avoid dealing in dollars. Now, so when other countries in the world see the United States, in particular with Russia, sanctioning and taking all these actions, which we had to take to try to prevent all-out war against Russia, they're saying, "Whoa, well, my currency, what if we do something the US doesn't like?" They're likely to do the same thing to us. So it has caused a number of nations, and I've seen numbers as high as in the 30s, 30 some additional nations, to move toward the BRICS and away from the dollar. Now, this is going to pose a great problem. And when you go back to Ray Dalio, his first point of risk was the creation of debt in our own country. And now there's some stability in debt being held by other countries, US debt being held by other countries, but there are some precarious situations out there that are unfolding, particularly with Japan. Now, it's no secret China has been reducing its holding of US debt. But when you get to Japan and the Saudis and all of the Arab states, the Arab Emirates, all the wealthy Arab states that hold a sizable amount of our debt, what could cause them to sell it? Well, Japan has been on the verge of selling huge swaths of our debt to take that money and support the yen. And they need to be watched because they have some difficulties with a nominal positive interest rate. I mean, less than 1%. They're having some difficulties supporting the yen. Now, possibly when we start reducing rates now, it will take some of that pressure off, hence take some of the internal pressure out so they won't have to dump our debt. We don't want countries to dump our debt right now. We're in a position that we haven't been in since 1944, which is countries are not net buying our debt. They're not adding to the US debt. They're nervous about US debt. Our debt has hit record levels. And what that has done is it's only left us two ways to finance our debt, because every year two things occur. Two things occur. One is debt comes due. When it comes due, those people must get cash. In order for them to get cash, we have to sell more debt. Okay, so we sell more debt to pay the people off who held our debt when it comes due. And then the second thing is, when you're in a hole, right? Well, our Congress keeps digging deeper. This year, ending in 2 days, the fiscal year, the United States fiscal year, we will have very close, if not 2 trillion of additional spending that we had to sell debt to finance because we didn't take that money in. And this is at a time where we're setting records in tax revenue. I've never seen this in my life. It's crazy, totally crazy. Nobody in Congress is addressing it. Neither major political candidates addressing it. And it is the most scary thing I've ever seen for America. It's tragic that the people are not being talked to about this and prepared for consequences from it, because they will come. Mother Nature doesn't care whether your political class lets you know about looming problems. They don't care at all. And unfortunately, our political class today, we have a populist candidate and we have a progressive populist candidate. Now, as a student of economics, one thing I've noticed since all the way back since the Bolsheviks started in Russia is it don't work. Progressivism doesn't work. Sounds good, but it never has worked. So, but they're both populists. That means they're going to tell people what they want to hear. That's not what we need right now. And that doesn't make the possibility of war less likely. In my opinion, it makes it more likely because it takes that kind of a shock to the system. People have to be almost made docile about the risks today, and they're being put to sleep, so to speak, and it's reminiscent of something in our past, and I want to bring it up right now. On July 21st, 1861, what happened? Well, I want to tell you what. Ladies took their carousels and picnic baskets. Gentlemen packed champagne glasses, and they went out. What did they go out to do? They went out to watch the first battle of Bull Run, the first battle of Bull Run in the Civil War. What are they doing? They dressed in their Sunday best and went out to watch it. Is that a proper thing? I mean, is your head screwed on right if you're doing that? Well, I can tell you, after that tragic first battle with numerous deaths on both sides, there wasn't anybody picnicking again to Civil War battles. Cities were burned down. So many soldiers lost their lives on both sides. It was a grim reality that set in, and a sobriety that captured almost every American. But it wasn't there at the onset. At the onset of war, they were bringing picnic baskets, and I have to wonder today, as we watch our TVs and as we put on the news and hear about Palestine, hear about the Gaza Strip, hear about Ukraine. I mean, Palestine is less than 100,000 people that have been killed or wounded, but Ukraine is 1 million people have been killed or wounded. 1 million. And are we taking this serious enough? Are we really taking it serious enough? I mean, is it a wise thing to put Putin in a corner and give him no options of escape? Because that's exactly what this administration has done. And of course, they rally around the notion of democracy and freedom, and we all love democracy and freedom. And Putin had to be stood up to and stopped. You only wish that Obama might have started this. That process started back during the Obama-Biden administration when parts of Ukraine were taken over. Nobody said a peep. Okay, and in this thing, right now. When is it going to get into a position where it could actually threaten a war? I mean, we've actually driven Iran and Russia together. Can you imagine Iran and Russia uh, together in this effort? I mean, it makes no sense. None of it makes sense. But when you look at the picnickers, you have to ask yourself the question: is our population in the U.S. We have a workaday. We get home, we turn the news on. Very many of us are saddened. We've never seen such coverage as the deaths in Palestine. They're upsetting. But in every war, civilians are killed. Oh my God. If we kept score, we'd go to Afghanistan. Pick your war all the way back to World War II. This notion civilians are the ones without the guns. Oh my God, when you're in a war without a gun, that's even worse. Very many civilians disproportionately are killed, but we've never had a press that every day from morning to night covers it. And it stirred up our young, and of course, there's also been money from from Palestinian groups to promote discord in America on the issue, and it basically is a total misinvestment of time and energy uh, in that situation. But on the other hand, uh, there are countries of basically dictators, religious dictators, whatever you want to call them, from the Ayatollah in Iran, in almost every country in the Mideast except Israel, a tiny, tiny country with a population of give or take 5 to 6 million, surrounded by Muslim dictatorships. And those dictatorships, incidentally, have never done anything good for their people. I mean, take Iran. Iran itself, 80% of the population lives on $6,000 a year. 80% of the population. And although they've received hundreds of billions of dollars in the last 3 years, due to the easing of tariffs and restrictions and their sales, primarily their sale of oil, do you think it's benefited the people in Iran? No, it all went into military investment. Okay, so be very careful, even if you're Muslim and you're an American, be careful of who you're siding with here. I mean, it's a sad thing to see civilians die, Palestinians. It's very sad. But it's a war. And all is fair in love and war, they say. And so that has to be considered. So today, the United States is in trade war with China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea. We're in technological wars with China, Russia, and Iran. We're in political influence wars, specifically with Russia and China. We're in sanction and tariff wars with Russia, China, and Iran, to name three. Moreover, we're arming and thereby participating as proxies in two shooting wars. I mean, our military bases have been attacked. Our naval ships have been attacked in the Straits of Hormuz by Houthis, who are also subsidized by Iran. And so these things are going on right now. There has been no effort. We have an executive branch dead set on appeasement, and every effort of appeasement, in my opinion, has led to an acceleration in both theaters. In 2 years, you can see the Ukrainian theater has developed into attacks within Russia. We've recently given them airplanes. We have U.S. soldiers in Ukraine training them. Much of the money that went to GMOs, you have to, $6 billion to buy blankets. Really? Come on, where did that money go? Here we hardly can defend our own border, yet we're spending $175 billion of borrowed money to defend the border in Ukraine. I mean, really, does that make sense? Doesn't make sense to me. The stories and something that's particularly troubling when you sit back and look at World War III. I want to give you some quotes that Russell Mead brought out. Now he's a conservative. I'll admit that. Washington Post. He mentions David Ignatius of the Washington Post states that Ukraine is bleeding out. That's a Washington Post writer. And then he goes further. The New York Times reports that China is expanding and escalating violence in its campaign to drive Philippine forces from islands and shoals that Beijing illegitimately claims. And then Bloomberg reports Washington officials are fearful that Russia will help Iran cross the finish line in its race for nuclear weapons. Now, these three articles, cited by me, a conservative, were printed by liberal news media. And when you get these kind of disclosures by a media that overwhelmingly has been in favor of Biden-Harris, you've got to scratch your head. It's particularly scary when liberal news media is beginning to realize these huge weaknesses. So if you look at the Commission on the National Defense Strategy, NDS, now they released a long report in 2018. Now this is a couple of years before Trump left office. And in that report, they said militarily we're falling behind and that we need to increase the military 3 to 5% above inflation. If you have a 2 to 3 inflation rate, 2% inflation rate, they would call for a 5 to 7% increase in the military annually to catch up. They're saying in 2018 we're falling behind. Well, they came out with a report in 2024, okay, and the same commission, and it said industrial production is grossly inadequate to provide the equipment, technology, and munitions needed today, let alone given the demands of a great power conflict, the potential of a great power conflict. That's chapter 7, page 51 of the report. The bipartisan report underscores urgency and says additional resources are needed for the military. Now, what's happened since 2018? Trump did increase military spending nominally in 2019. From 2021 to 2024, military spending has been held the same. Therefore, today, the military, just as a result of the inflation rate, has declined 20%. Our military abilities have declined. So I want to quote one of my favorite authors, a guy named Hayek, out of a book he wrote way back in the 1940s, Road to Serfdom. He said, the loss of economic freedom precedes the loss of intellectual and political freedom. Whenever liberty, as we understand it, has been destroyed, this has almost always been done in the name of some new freedom promised to the people, but not delivered. Now, Road to Serfdom was a pretty influential book for me when I went back to school and studied it. And let's think about that a minute. That the economic freedoms, the loss of economic freedoms precede the loss of intellectual and political freedoms. So let's look at America today and what's happened. How many small businesses have disappeared in America? And admittedly, it's not as desirable to close let's say 10% of our small businesses and provide them jobs on, for example, Amazon assembly lines. That's not progress. That's very regressive. And today you have a number of problems that we don't need to get into now. We've covered them on numerous podcasts. We're going to go back to them next week when we start to talk about proposing a new tax code for America and subsequent cuts in expenses to protect our dollar and protect our social system. We're going to be getting into that next week. I'll have a couple more words to say about it this week. So you have back to Dalio's first his warnings. Dalio says there's a likelihood of 35 to 40% that we have another civil war. That's a war within our own country. And he said there's a 35 to 40% that we're forced into World War III. Now, there are many signs out there. The policy that our leaders have chosen to take in the last 3 or 4 years of appeasement just ain't working. I mean, let's call it what it is. Does that mean, you get some willy-nilly, some timid people who will say, well, it's kept us out of war. It hasn't kept us out of war. We've had 80, 90 attacks on our military in the Middle East. We've had our naval ships attacked by Houthis regularly to this day. They've repressed the whole straits. They've sent oil cargoes in different directions. I would say they're winning that battle. And if that's not, if we're not in that war, then people need to take off their rose-colored glasses and give it another look, because they're deceiving themselves. I'm not at all saying we should accelerate anything. I'm saying you have to know where you're at before you know where to go. And we're not realistically grasping where Americans are at. And we need to do that. We need to completely understand that in both conflicts, including the Ukraine conflict, where our current administration has declined peace offers. President Xi has tried a number of times with President Putin to get some agreement on peace. And it's not them that have stopped it, the discussions. It is us. We've said nothing is acceptable except return to the old borders. It's not clear what old borders they're talking about. Are they talking about the Obama Biden old border? Are they talking about the border, the Biden Harris border at the beginning of their administration? It's not clear, and they've been inflexible to talk about it. And you end up in a trench warfare where it's just a battle of attrition, where these poor people are dying every day over and over and over again. And there's no progress being made. If there's any progress, it's that we're slowly doing what arguably we should have done from day one, or actually prior to day one. We should have armed Ukraine. And we're not arming Taiwan, which we should have done. We're not even giving Taiwan the equipment that they've bought. It's backlogged. In other words, they've paid us for military equipment to defend themselves, and we don't even fill the contracts of the money they paid for. Now, we should be arming Taiwan, making them into a porcupine to communicate to President Xi that there's going to be a huge cost should he do it. Instead, we're doing nothing. Similarly to Ukraine, we should have armed them the minute threats emerged, even prior to the massive withdrawals in Afghanistan, but we didn't. So those preventive methods by force never were taken. And is that the sole reason we ended up the way we are? No, but it has to be noted. And there's nothing going on today in peace discussions or anything that makes me feel confident that they're going to be honored. particularly when you have Iran talking out of both sides of its mouth. You have its president saying we want peace, and its Ayatollah saying there will be revenge for the death of the leader of Hezbollah, which just occurred a day or two ago. So there's not any sense coming out of that part of the world, and it should be concerning. Americans need to get involved. They can't make it a TV changer issue where you just click a button and listen a little while and then click another button. This is something we are involved in it. We must find a way to bring it to an end. And the quicker, the sooner, the better. And if it's not brought to an end, you have to notice its tendency to accelerate. And that has to be of supreme concern to everyone. Now, I'm going to say a few words about next week and the following week and the following week and the following week. We're going to spend 4 weeks, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, on proposing a new tax code for America and likely changes in expenses for our government, reductions in expenses, so that the two can produce a balanced budget and give us some confidence that our dollar will still be there. Will still be there. Not, not that we're not going to get rid of the deficit overnight, but if we don't get a handle on it and show the world we're serious, we can't expect to stay we have no right to stay as a reserve currency. And unfortunately, the political class this century has just done everything they can to destroy the value of the dollar. And I'll be honest, I'm so sick of politicians that will get up and they'll talk about reducing debt by, if you're a progressive like Kamala, by increasing taxes. If you're a populist like Trump, by lowering taxes. But the point is, I don't look at what they say, I look at what they do. They're not doing it. They both have records, and their records show that they're not doing it. And my God, what's the first thing you do when you're in a hole? Stop digging. Stop digging, politicians. Put the friggin' shovel down and stop digging. You're killing the country. They don't get it. They're going to talk, 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 and dig, dig, dig. And we, the people, need to understand that, because if there's any hope for any sanity, any survivability to our concept of government, you can't go deeper in debt. And incidentally, I'll make another comment about that. And this is why we're going to focus on that for the next 4 weeks. It needs to be done. Now, CBO threw a number out that we have 10 years. Don't believe it. CBO's never been right. They've never been right. And, to rely on any government agency to predict when we need to do something about our debt is crazy. They're an appendage of the entity that's out of control. God knows what they're going to say. And, you can go back to Reinhardt and Rogoff, who wrote very interesting writings during the Clinton years that predicted all this. And they were 2 liberal economists. The things that I'll be proposing are right down mainline economics. Liberals and conservatives agree on them more than not. And they need to be taken seriously, and people need to push for it to be done. You're not hearing a word from either the populist group or the populist progressive group. You're not hearing a word about it. All you're hearing from them is gifts, gifts, gifts. And oh my God, aren't we people so entitled? That's not what our country's about. If we don't get back to what it's about, we're not going to have a country to get back to. Okay, so I want everybody to have a blessed week, and I'm going to look forward to seeing you the next 4 weeks, and we're going to get to the bottom of it, and we're going to come up with proposals that make sense, that will change the course of America. They are structural changes. They're not policies. Oh my God, save me from another government policy, please. They are structural changes. Some of them are going to be a little painful, but if we don't do them, we're not going to have a country. So please stay with us and let me know what you think. Okay, and I'll see you next week. Have a blessed week, and bye bye.